Hello, I'm Randall M. Rueff. There's an old saying, those who forget history are destined to repeat it. Well, that's exactly what some software companies have done and are doing. They're forgetting the past, and they're making mistakes now and for the future. And that mistake is renting. A lot of companies like Adobe, like for Photoshop, and some other companies that run computer software are wanting to rent you the software. Okay? One of the great things about iTunes and the legacy of Steve Jobs is he discovered the fact that people don't want to rent their music. They want to own them. They want to be able to put it on their computer, their iPod, put it in videos, whatever, burn it to CDs, DVDs, whatever the case may be. They want to own their music. Okay? And that's the same way it is with software. People want to own the software. Okay? We pay money for the software, at least most of us do. If you're not, you should be. But you pay for the software. Especially I'm going to use the example of Adobe Photoshop because it's a very popular program used by a lot of people. And it's very expensive software. It's about $700 to $900 depending on which package you buy. So first of all, it's a chunk of change, okay? It's not a cheap software package, either from a price point or from a value of the software. Granted, it's one of those where you get what you pay for, okay? You get a lot, it does a lot, but it also costs a lot. So it balances out. But what a lot of companies now are thinking about doing and trying to do, and Adobe is one of them, is renting this software out to you. Instead of owning it like you own your music on an iPod, you would pay a monthly subscription fee. Now let me tell you why you don't want that. But before I get to that, let me tell you why they say you do want that, and why I think that's bad. What they say the reason you want this is so that when they make updates to the software, you can get them automatically via the internet. You're not using old software, you're using new and better and improved. When they put a new feature in or a new fix a bug or whatever, it's automatically updated. Well, you know what? They have that already. Apple and several other companies do that to their OS software all the time, whether it be the iOS or the Mac OS or the old classic iPod software. They do that all the time already. If you have an internet connection and your computer's hooked up to it, it comes on and it says, there's an update available, do you want to upgrade? All you gotta do is put yes and it starts to do it. Okay? So that's already out there. Okay? So that isn't really a good reason to rent your software. Okay? Now, some of the reasons I'm going to tell you don't want to rent them is internet connectivity. I don't know about you. I live in Indiana, and we have something called AT&T Internet. It's our internet service provider, our ISP. And quite frankly, it sucks. If I get my internet on my computer working about 60% of the time, I'm very happy. It's supposed to be 100% of the time, but that's never realistic. Okay? That is not realistic. And people who have iPhones have the same problem that use AT&T. They realize it's not always working. It dies. It quits. If you have the iPhone, the same thing if you're using a computer at home, the internet service provider quits out. There are times I've had to wait 10 minutes just to get service. I mean, you just have to sit there and wait. So that's one reason you don't want to rent the software. I mean, can you imagine going to a meeting one day? I mean, you say you worked on a project for about a week or so, or however long you've worked on a project. You get up the next morning, go to the meeting, ready to show off your meeting, and you get a message pop up. You need to renew your subscription to use this software. I mean, and granted they have, I'm sure they're going to have warnings that say, oh, you have 2 days to renew, or you have 1 day, or you have a week to renew your software, blah, blah, blah. But if you get busy and don't think about it, and you go to that meeting the next day, and it's like, I mean, that's very unprofessional, okay? So that's one reason I wouldn't want it. Okay, and I don't recommend that you get software that you rent. Second, again, internet connectivity. What if you're somewhere like, you see all the time all these adventurers and explorers doing webcasts and doing video like from North Pole, or, and granted that's not a lot of people, but imagine you need to use your video editing software in the middle of God's nowhere, and you don't have internet access, so you can't renew your subscription. I mean, come on, seriously? I mean, it makes me nervous that people are wanting to do this, okay? Another thing that like Apple and some of these other companies are promoting is the iCloud service, where they keep your files. You can, if you want to, you can keep the files in the cloud instead of on your hard drive. Again, it goes back to internet connectivity. What if you need to use those files? You're paying for the iCloud service. You need to get to those files, and you haven't renewed your subscription. I mean, you can have work on somebody's server and not have access to it. So there's a lot of downside to the iCloud and renting your software that I just don't go for. I think there's a lot of reasons when it comes to software. You should buy the software, have the software, be able to use it. It's bad enough for me, for example, I had Adobe Photoshop 7.0. I paid for it, it was legit. When I upgraded my OS from 10.4 to 10.5, for some reason it slowed down. Then when I upgraded to 10.6, all of a sudden we don't support PowerPC applications. So it completely died. I lost $700 right there. So I can only imagine what would happen if you spent that kind of money, or we're spending so much a month, you know, and you couldn't get, I mean, you have files you need and you can't access it. So, I mean, I understand that problem. So, this is not a path that you want to take. You want to go out there, you want to tell your software people, hey, I want to buy the software, I want to own the software so I can use it on my computer. Okay? I mean, they have serial numbers now. I realize that one of the things with serial numbers, when the serial numbers first came in, I know this because I worked with some people that were, I'm not going to mention any names, but for example, they would buy like Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, and it came with a password. Well, you could use that password 10, 20, 30, 40 computers, when it's only supposed to be one used for one computer. You know, they would take the software, here's the software, copy it, blah, blah, blah. Here's the password, no big deal, or the serial number. Type in that serial number for this computer, type it in, you know, one password would work. Well, they fixed that now with the internet, where once you use a password, or not password, but a serial number for one computer and one software package on one computer, it's just good for that computer. So that's not really an issue anymore. I like to think of software. When you buy software, I imagine, or I try to think of what it's like for people who don't have internet. When I buy something, if I pay $700 or $800, or however much I pay for it, what's it going to be like for somebody somewhere who doesn't have internet access? Are they still going to be able to use that software? Are they going to be able to register the software? You know, a lot of people don't have internet. If they don't have internet, they're not going to be able to register the software. That's why they have those. A lot of companies still have those. You know, you can fill out and mail them in. That's a good deal. So you know, these companies need to think about. You know what? Yes, a lot of people have internet access, but there's a lot of people who don't have internet access. And when they don't have internet, I mean, imagine buying, again, I'm using Adobe Photoshop, but Adobe Photoshop, you spend the $700 to $900 and you can't register the software, which means you can't use it because you don't have internet access. I mean, you can type in your serial number, but because you don't have the internet access, you can't access or basically turn on the software. I mean, that's, you know, you've paid for the software, it's legit, you've got a legit code, but because you don't have internet access, because you're, you know, wherever, you know, I try to think of, if I was designing computers, I try to think of all the advantages and all the disadvantages. The internet being an advantage, not having the internet being a disadvantage, you know. So, I mean, you want to be able to serve both of those clients. And both of those people are, the top people and the bottom people and everybody in between, is going to be buying software. So you have to, in my opinion, to make the best software, you have to make it accessible to all the people and all the people in between. Okay? So, I mean, that's just my thoughts on the matter. And again, I hope you will take the time, if you have a chance or the opportunity, to write to the software developers or the companies, or if they ask you your opinion on this matter, that you will take the time to say, hey, I want to own the software. I don't want to have to pay rent on a monthly basis. Because there's just too many issues and too many problems with it. Steve Jobs, back in the day when he was still alive, figured out this solution with iTunes, and that people wanted to own their music. And because of that, we learned a lesson. He taught us a lesson. There's a lot of people who, either are ignoring that lesson or don't know that lesson, and they're trying this new thing called software rental, and it's just not what we want. So until next time, I'm Randall M saying thanks for watching. Have a good day, and may God bless you.